The hunt for the I-70 serial killer. Interstate 70 stretched out like a vein through the heartland of America, connecting bustling cities and sleepy towns. To the unsuspecting traveler, it was just a highway. But for the residents of several Midwestern states in the early 1990s, it became a sinister path traveled by an unseen predator, a shadow lurking in the periphery of everyday life. It was an ordinary Wednesday on April 8, 1992, when Robin Fuldauer, a 26-year-old manager at a Payless shoe source in Indianapolis, unlocked the doors to begin her shift. The store was quiet, with the usual trickle of morning customers browsing for shoes. As the day wore on, Robin's friendly demeanor made her a favorite among regulars. She had dreams, aspirations, and a life full of promise. By closing time, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and the store's fluorescent lights hummed in the growing darkness. The bell above the door jingled one last time as Robin tidied up. But this time, the customer wasn't there to shop. In the dim lighting, she was overpowered, her life extinguished with brutal efficiency. The next morning, her body was found strangled with a phone cord. The horror of her death marked the beginning of a trail of terror. Months later, on September 25, 1992, in St. Charles, Missouri, 23-year-old Patricia Smith was busy with the back-to-school rush at the clothing store where she worked. She was diligent and kind, traits that endeared her to colleagues and customers alike. As the day ended, she prepared to close the store alone, a routine she had performed countless times without fear. Patricia's absence was quickly noticed when she didn't return home. Her family and friends launched a frantic search, which ended tragically 6 days later. Her body was discovered in the trunk of her car at a shopping mall in Bridgeton, Missouri. She had been strangled, just like Robin. A chilling pattern was beginning to emerge. The town of Terre Haute, Indiana, was next to feel the killer's presence. On November 4, 1992, Nancy Kitzmiller, 24, was alone in the small clothing store where she worked. Her cheerful nature made her a beloved figure in the community. As she counted the till at closing time, she was unaware of the danger that lurked just outside. Nancy was abducted, and her body was found the next day in a ditch along I-70 in Illinois. The cause of death was the same: strangulation. The killer's modus operandi was becoming disturbingly clear, and law enforcement realized they were dealing with a serial murderer. The once comforting routine of a workday had turned into a nightmare for women working alone in retail stores. In Wichita, Kansas, the horror struck again on February 6, 1993. Sarah Blessing and Carmel Sanger, both 37, worked together at a Payless shoe source store. The two women were well known and well loved in their community, their friendship a testament to the bonds formed over years of shared experiences. That day, a predator walked into their store. Hours later, their absence was noted and a search ensued. Weeks later, their bodies were found in a ditch along I-70 near Grain Valley, Missouri. Both women had been strangled, their lives cut short by the same ruthless hand that had claimed the others. April 27, 1993, brought tragedy to Terre Haute once more. Ann Brubaker, 28, was closing up the store where she worked. She had a bright smile and an even brighter future. Her shift ended in abduction, her body discovered the next day in a ditch along I-70 in Illinois. The method of murder was tragically familiar, leaving the community in a state of fear and mourning. The last known victim linked to the I-70 serial killer was Tracy Leonard, 26, who worked at a video store in Kansas City, Missouri. On May 7, 1994, Tracy was abducted from her workplace. Her family and friends held on to hope for her safe return, but their worst fears were confirmed 3 days later when her body was found in a ditch along I-70 in Kansas. She, too, had been strangled. Law enforcement agencies from Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, and Ohio joined forces, pooling resources and expertise to catch the killer. Detectives combed through the crime scenes, gathering forensic evidence and interviewing witnesses. They analyzed patterns, looking for any connection between the victims and the elusive murderer. The task force faced significant challenges. The killer left behind few clues, moving swiftly and silently, choosing victims who were often alone and vulnerable. The scattered locations of the crimes suggested a familiarity with the interstate system, leading some to speculate that the killer might be a long-haul truck driver or someone who traveled frequently for work. As the investigation progressed, several theories emerged. Profilers suggested the killer might have had a background in the retail industry or harbored a deep-seated resentment towards women working in such environments. The precision and control exhibited in the murders pointed to a calculated individual, possibly with military training or experience in law enforcement. Others believed the killer was a drifter, blending into the transient population that frequented highways and truck stops. Despite these theories, no definitive suspect was identified, and the case grew cold as leads dried up. For the families of the victims, the pain of losing a loved one was compounded by the lack of answers. They held vigils, organized community meetings, and lobbied for more resources to be allocated to the investigation. Each year, they marked the anniversaries of their loved ones' deaths, hoping for a breakthrough that would bring them closure. Despite the passage of time, their determination never wavered. They maintained contact with law enforcement, provided new leads, and kept the memory of their loved ones alive in the public consciousness. The I-70 serial killer case officially became a cold case, but it never left the minds of those who had worked on it. Advances in forensic technology provided new hope. DNA analysis and other modern investigative techniques were employed to re-examine evidence, but the killer's identity remained elusive. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit continued to profile the unknown subject, hoping to match the killer's psychological profile with new suspects. Local police departments revisited old witness statements, hoping to uncover something they might have missed. The case of the I-70 serial killer remains one of the most enigmatic and chilling in American criminal history. The shadow of the killer still looms over the Midwest, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can exist just beyond the edge of the familiar. For the families of Robin Fuldauer, Patricia Smith, Nancy Kitzmiller, Sarah Blessing, Carmel Sanger, Ann Brubaker, and Tracy Leonard, the search for justice continues. They hold on to hope that one day the truth will be uncovered and the person responsible for these heinous acts will be brought to justice. The story of the I-70 serial killer serves as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk along the most ordinary of paths and the resilience of those who seek the light of truth in the darkest of places. As technology advances and investigative techniques improve, the hope remains that one day the shadows will be lifted and justice will prevail.